Hello, hello. It's your girl Pretty Thick, and welcome back to the Pretty Thick Lifestyle. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to the podcast. Oh my goodness, where have I been? It has been so long. Before we go any further, before we carry on, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to like and share this podcast. If you're listening to this, you can catch it on all the platforms: Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. The list is endless, and you can catch it on my YouTube channel as well. You know what? I'm not even going to waste your time. I'm going to jump right in. I posted yesterday that I'm about to start a mental health series on the podcast and on the YouTube channel. I wanted to touch on that because I would like to give you an idea of why the mental health series is so important to me. Mainly because, fact number one, I myself have suffered with mental health for quite a bit. And it happened in the past, and then it returned, and it happened again, because that's how it is. And I think we're so not aware of mental health, and we're really not mental health aware. And it's so important to know that, the signs are everywhere, but we don't see them. Depression doesn't have a look, a color, a shape, an age. It doesn't have a type. It doesn't have a gender. Neither does anxiety. Neither does bipolar. Neither does a lot of mental health illnesses. And we take all of these, we kind of paint them with the same brush. And that is very, very dangerous, because we are missing out on a lot of opportunities to help each other. We're missing out on a lot of opportunities to heal if you are a person that has suffered with mental health. How mental health started for me, or rather how it all started, I'm going to say mental health, but now I'm going to just zone it in, because I want to give you guys context on how it affects me personally. So my father died when I was, before I even begin on the story, I'm by myself. So just bear with me. I really wanted this to be a personal episode before I share space and I share stories I listen to stories that people are going to share with me. My father died when I was 4 years old. He was on his way to pick me up from preschool. Him and my mother had only been married a year. We were probably 2 or 3 months, I could be wrong, 2 or 3 months in the new house, and he died in a car accident. So it was sudden, there was no preparation, nothing. And how depression then started in our family was then, because my mother was traumatized, to say the least. So she was then diagnosed with severe depression. And, I was a child, I think I started to be very aware of it when I was around 9. And only because this is when I started then living here, there, and everywhere, because my mother was institutionalized so many times, because she was not coping. My mother was drinking 19 pills at a time every day to just get through the day. She eventually even had to get, I should have looked this up before I say this, but I think it's called ECT, electro something, which is when they kind of suppress your memory and they shock you. So now she suffers from forgetfulness. I giggle because we laugh about it now, because God's been good. But yeah, they had to do that because then they had to shock her or perform that treatment on her to suppress the memories, because every time she thought about my dad, she went back. Every time she saw me, she was, she went back. And, like I said, when I was 9 or 10, I started to realize that I was her trigger. If I was with my mom for a long period of time, she started to kind of fall back. She started to relapse. And this kind of planted something in me. But, and then I became a really weird child. So I would be in therapy, and I remember the therapy sessions very well. I did not speak. Yeah, My my shrink can literally, sometimes when I see him and he's just like, whoa, I remember you. And we would just sit and we would just kind of look at each other and he'd be like, do you want to draw? And I'd be like, I'll just shrug my shoulders and he would be like, sure, you could do whatever you want. And I would just maybe pick up a book and just start paging through the book and not speak. And, a lot of the people around us, mainly family, were not aware. I was just a quiet child, and that's just who I was. So fast forward to many years later, at the age of 20 years old, I've been out of school for 2 years, and I've been working for 2 years. Well, the first year was just waitressing, really, because where do you find jobs without going to school, right? So stay in school. But, when I got my first real job, I guess, I started making some really, really bad financial decisions. I had no financial coaching whatsoever. I would take my whole paycheck and we would just be paying back my mother's debt because obviously my mother raised me by herself. So I I decided to not go to school. I said, let's rather sort out all of this. But having said that, her and I never really spoke about budgets and what needs to be done and how to go about things. So I started making really bad financial decisions, and then I was getting offered credit cards. I took that. Offered a petrol card, on it. And I was just drowning. And I couldn't speak up. I couldn't say this to anybody. I couldn't express this to anybody because I was so scared of being judged. I was scared of what people would say. But the worst part was that I didn't even know how I was going to get out of it. So after a year or so with these bad decisions, I started drowning, like I said, and it was just a lot. I was overwhelmed. I was scared to go back to my mother that not only have I exhausted all of the, options that we would ever have of trying to sort out all of this debt, I am actually now in real life debt myself. So by the age of 22, I was in debt that was higher than my age, and I crashed. And that was when I first got institutionalized. Yeah, it was dark. It was very, very dark. Because it was only then I started having to face the feelings of all these years of how I never really dealt with my father's death. How was I going to deal with it as a 4-year-old, really? And how, there was a buildup of other emotions between families and, families fighting and families not being peaceful. So there was that. And it was a dark time. It was a very dark time. I felt ashamed. I felt very ashamed. I was very afraid to tell people that I am depressed. I almost did not know what that meant because I thought that was a grown people thing, people that have had husbands and wives and. But yeah, I was depressed. I started emotionally eating, and I was already a big girl, so I just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And the bigger you get, the more sad you become. And I went on a spiritual journey that I will forever be grateful for, that pulled me out of a very deep and dark hole that I didn't even know how I would get out of that. But, what I want to highlight with this is that, fast forward to today, you always think that you've healed. You always think that you've passed it. And I believe that I am healed because I know that I'm going to preach for just a second. I know that God can do absolutely anything. And he fixed me, and I didn't think that I was going to be healed from that. I really didn't. I always thought that was the end of me. I thought, my life can end now. I could just die if I want. I don't really want to die, but I don't want to feel this way. And I don't see any way out. And so having come out of that, I realized that, I was walking around every day like nothing is going on. Nobody knew. To a point, not even my mother knew. She didn't. The only day my mother found out that I was depressed was the day I crashed and went into the hospital. But the reason why this series is then so important to me is that we are walking around every day with the weight of the world on our shoulders. We are feeling this unspoken of pressure that we are killing ourselves with, and some even literally. The month of October was very interesting, to say the least. I went through something at work that shook me to my core, and I've developed so many coping mechanisms over the years, trying to undo things like overeating and, other unhealthy habits that, you end up masking your feelings so much that you lose touch of your feelings. You lose touch of your true emotions because you're so busy putting on a front of what you think people should see, because you're kind of ashamed of, like, okay, so now you're going to have a mental breakdown again, you know? Depressed for what? Your life is fine. Depressed how? You've got a job, you've got a place, you've got a mom, you've got family, you've got friends. What are you depressed about? And I masked it so much that I didn't even realize it for myself. It was only yesterday when I put out the post that, oh wow, because it literally hit me. I was in a Taxify and I was sitting at the back, and I felt an overwhelming sadness, and I recognized that feeling immediately, and I thought to myself, oh my goodness, I'm having a relapse. Because, in the moment where this thing happened at work, I thought I was going to lose my job. And that would have been the end of a lot of things, when you are financial support to your family, to yourself even, and life is happening and it's hard to find employment. We know that. And it shook me. And I've been talking about what I labeled a mental block. And I realized that me saying that right off the bat, I masked what was really, really happening. And I realized that, how many people are like me? How many people are at work right now listening to this and are having to actually look into the mirror and be like, am I okay? How many people have friends who check on them religiously, who have friends who are always happy, always smiling, always, in a good mood? How many of us are those people? How many people are taking care of parents who are suffering from depression? Are you okay? Are your parents okay? Is your husband okay? Is your wife okay? Is your boss okay? Are your colleagues fine? Have you checked on people? Have you checked on yourself? This is why the mental health series, is so important to me. I want us to talk about this because depression doesn't have a shape, a color, a gender, an age. It's just depression. But I want us to unpack this. I want us to talk about waking up in the morning and feeling anxious if or not you're going to lose your job. I want us to wake up in the morning. I want us to talk about waking up in the morning and feeling run down, feeling like you cannot do this anymore, feeling like, why am I even alive? I want us to talk about that. We don't talk about that enough. And this is going to be a series that's going to take away the shame from all of this, because there's nothing to be ashamed of. We are all dealing with quite a lot, and I'd rather hear about your problems than listen to people give speeches at your memorial. So talk to the girl. Let's talk about this. Share your stories. I do want to say that I'm fine, and I say that in a way of being aware of my feelings. not the I'm fine that I've been passing off the whole of October, because I was not fine. And so when you ask somebody now, how are you doing? Invest in that person. Please do not tell people to snap out of it. Do not. Please do not tell people to take a breath and move on. Do not. Invest your time in listening to someone. Focus and pay attention to your friends. There are patterns that happened, and I've been fortunate enough that, I'm in a circle where they noticed, you're awfully quiet. Why is this happening to you? This is not your best work. What's happening? And it's all these small things that we don't pay attention to, but they are happening. There is a mom out there who just had a baby, and she is sad. Well, everybody's saying, oh, the baby's beautiful. How's the baby? She's sad right now because postpartum is a thing, because postnatal is an actual thing. So let's talk about this. Let's share each other's stories and let's be open. There's nothing to be ashamed of. I, Rose Mashaka Treo, was previously diagnosed with depression. I previously had a relapse in the month of October 2019, but I am aware of my feelings and I would like to be aware of yours. I am not ashamed because the depression does not define me. I'll never be ashamed because the depression will never define me. You are stronger than you know. You will get through it. This is not the end. Thank you for listening to this. Thank you for listening to my story. I look forward to sharing more stories with you. I look forward to you sharing your stories with me, because we're going to go on this journey together and we're going to win, because we are going to take this first step together. The first step is to admit that you are not okay, but it is nothing to be ashamed of. Thank you so much for listening to this. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing this with your friends and your family. Remember, self-love is the greatest revolution.